Hey there, I've got Don Barden back again. He shared his story a couple episodes ago, and he's a CEO and owner of The Perfect Plan. He is the author of The Perfect Plan, which is published in 39 countries and is a sought-after speaker. And he also shared that it's actually used at Harvard University as part of their curriculum. This perfect plan concept.
We don't want to. Well, actually, Oxford University.
Oxford, sorry.
I did some work at Harvard, but yeah, it's Oxford.
Oxford.
So that's okay.
Apologies.
Let's get them in a piss and fight. That'd be great. Let them do it.
That's not our problem. That's theirs.
Not my problem. You're right.
The one thing for sure I want to do mention is Don and his wife are actively supporting Culture City, and they have a passion towards autism, sensory inclusion, youth leadership, and mental health. Thanks again, Don, for coming back and talk about The Perfect Plan.
No, thank you, Andre. I appreciate it. And as always, thank you for your work. I mean, you're inspiring so many people and giving them that boost of courage that they need to, go out there into the world. I know we're going to talk about, the business applications and things of Perfect Plan, but, the whole theme around the gift and the superpower of ADHD cannot be overlooked. And it's something that I know your listeners are very grateful. So I'm grateful. So thank you.
And I
start with that.
What you write in The Perfect Plan and what you're teaching here is, I think, is very beneficial for an ADHD entrepreneur to increase sales here by understanding the client. So what is 100%. The Perfect Plan?
So I spent about 25 years working on Wall Street and for Wall Street-based firms. As somebody with ADHD, I found my unique ability. I found my superpower, and that was engagement. And it was around taking very, very complex subjects and simplifying it. Because as somebody with ADHD, that's how I had to learn to live my life. Take all these things and simplify it. But I could see through the trees. I could see the forest. I could see the entire chessboard. And I think that's what the true power is of ADHD. But, the rest of the world's not like that. So I figured out that the best way to do that was with sales, and sales around very, very complex subjects. So good luck, happenstance, divine intervention, everything kind of led me to Wall Street. I worked my way up on some very complex institutional financial deals that were international. They were all over the world. And I also figured out that once I learned how to learn, that education is really the future. But education is not about knowledge. Education is about understanding. So I learned how I learned, and I focused on understanding over knowledge. Now, due respect to our friends at Harvard and Oxford and all them, they have to give tests, which are horrible, but they give these tests and you have to answer the questions. That's knowledge. To me, you do need that, but you need to understand it, more importantly. But what had happened was I was going back. I'd finished my graduate, my undergraduate, my graduate work, and I started working on my doctorate. And I wanted the firm that I worked for to fund it because it's not cheap. And they will fund things if it's something they can benefit from. So I'd gone to the CEO and told him about this idea I had, and he said it was a great idea, but we can't fund that because it doesn't help us. And I said, well, I got this other idea. And he said, what is it? And again, ADHD, looking at patterns and understanding what's happening in the world. This is before LinkedIn, before social media, before connections. We did have cell phones, but barely. We were encouraged not to use them because they were so expensive internationally. So I was traveling all over the world. But what I noticed, and this is important for your entrepreneurial listeners, is when I was traveling around the world, we work on different types of deals at different locations, in different cultures, and a lot of times in different languages. But I started noticing this pattern that the elite entrepreneurs, the elite producers, the elite leaders all did things the exact same way. And to the point where it became predictable. And again, but here's a cool thing, Andre. They were not related in the least little bit. The deal wasn't related. The industry wasn't related. The only thing that was related was money. And we were financing things. So I started going, wow, this is odd that I can be in India or Mexico City or in Rome, and different deal, different people, different language, same conversation. So I went back and I said, look, here's something I think we can study. I said, I believe that the elite leaders and producers in the world do things exactly the same way, that there's this, for lack of a better word, secret sauce. And if we can figure out what that is and understand why, that was the key. We have to understand the science, why they're doing this pattern. I think we can figure out how to do something that would impact not only us, but the rest of the world. And I remember the CEO saying, so he said, so you believe that there's a secret sauce that these elite producers around the world do, that if we could capture, we could do it ourselves? And I said, yeah. And he said, I'll pay for that all day long. So it took off, and we did a 5-year study, and we earned it. We proved it, and I was able to publish it. I own the rights to it, so I was able to publish it and get it out there. And it's been impactful for some of the biggest companies around the world. And like you said, it's in 39 countries right now. But it really is the pattern and the reasoning why these elite producers can engage their clients the way they do. And it's radically different than what a lot of people think, but it's the cadence and it's the sequence of events they go through in their communication techniques. And but more importantly, it's understanding why.
Okay, so then what's this elite 1% you've referenced?
These are the people. It's great that you said that, because it's across every industry. We studied the largest dairy farmers in Italy. We studied the tortilla manufacturers in Mexico. We studied the fish markets in Tokyo. I mean, we studied everybody. Anybody who is, and if you think about anything in life or economics, there's a bell curve, right? You got your bottom 20%, you got your middle 60% of performers, which ironically is the most important part. You can't survive without the middle. And then you got your top 20. And everybody talks about the top 20% of the performers. And in a sales organization, they're the people who get all the awards and things, and they're recognized. But here's what's interesting. There's an elite tip to that bell curve. There's a 1%ers who most of the time people don't pay any attention to them because they're so elite. They've lapped the field. They're out there on their own. They get sort of put off to the side, like, oh, I don't know what Andre's doing, but he always outproduces everybody else. But let's focus on the other 99%. So these are people that are so far ahead of the crowd that they're recognized, but nobody wants to pay any attention to them because they can't figure out why. Well, our theory was if you could figure out why they're so much better than everybody else, then you could bring at least the rest of the 19% of the top 20 up and possibly move the entire bell curve more to the right. So it's people that they perform so far outside the statistical mean that they're outliers. And the world's full of them. And athletes, in business, and writing, literature, science. It's those people that are just considered freak shows, and they're really not. Yeah. there's a pattern. They know exactly what
they figured something out.
Yeah, they figured it out.
So what I really liked in the book also, Don, was how you described there's 3 different types of clients, and they all have different decision-making processes or decision-making criterias.
Yep.
And what are those? What are the 3 different types of clients?
Yeah, that was a big part of the study at first, because again,
to me, that was a big change for me. Like, just completely
that was your aha moment, right?
Like, yeah.
Good. Well, so one of the things we had was, it's an obvious question, a hypothesis, right? Why do people make the decisions they do? Where do you begin, right? Because you start making decisions when you're 5 years old and you buy your first stick of bubble gum till the day you die. You're spending money, you're making decisions. And now with the world of technology and cell phones, you probably make 10 decisions before you get out of bed. So it's like, where do you even begin? Well, we realized, or one of our interns actually figured it out. She said, look, I think there's this idea. She said, what if there's like 2 or 3 big decisions in life that are so big they affect all the other decisions? I'm like, ooh, that'd be a lot easier. And so we figured those out. The 3 biggest decisions you make, number 1 and number 2, are faith and family. So once somebody establishes a faith and once somebody establishes their family, although some people redo family, but you say, okay, I'm sticking with that. But the 3rd big decision people make that's lifelong, and it doesn't seem to change much other than social integration, is the deployment of cash. And people think, oh, well, what about this? No. That's, like I said, from the time you buy your first stick of bubble gum to the day you die, you are spending money. You are doing something, right? So that is the biggest constant. So then we started thinking, okay, well, how do we figure out why people are deciding to do the things they're doing and buy the things they buy? And then after a while, I'm shortening this, but after a while, we figured it's not important what you buy. It's important where you buy it. So the theory was, if we could figure out where you go shopping, where you buy things, and we knew why you went there to buy it, then we would know why you make all these other decisions that you make in your life. So we went down that road and we proved it to be a truth. And what happened was, there's 3 parts of a pyramid in society or in a corporation. So if you're a business and you're selling to somebody that's a corporate buyer, a company is broken into 3 parts. You got the base of the pyramid, which is your average working class, go to work, clock in, clock out people, hardworking people who really make things happen, right? Those are the most important parts, the base of the pyramid. Then you got the middle part of the pyramid, and those are sort of middle managers, anybody with a title. from director, supervisor, vice president, whatever, managing directors, those people are in the middle. And then at the tip of the pyramid, you got your C-suite or your business owners, the CEO, CIO, CFO, people like that. So what we were able to do was look at this and say, okay, where do each of these segments go to buy things in their personal life? And how does that affect their decisions? Same pyramid exists in society, lower class, middle class, upper class. Now, again, no judgment. This is just math. This is just what is the reality of these variables that we're working with.
Almost facts.
So yeah, it's just the facts. It's no judgment. It's just the facts. So we started looking at the base of the pyramid, and you say, well, where did most of these people go shopping? Where do they go to spend their money? And every time I ask this in class or in a training session, everybody gets it. Walmart. Number one choice, Walmart, Walmart, Walmart. Largest private employer in the world. 1/3 of all US currency in the world passes through their hands every day. Interesting fact.
Wow.
1/3 of all US currency passes through Walmart. They move more currency than the US Treasury does. That's how big Walmart is. Why? Because they focus on low price. It's not about quality. It's not about quantity. It's low price. In fact, if you look at their logo, it says Walmart, always low prices, always. They are stressing it. So people who live on fixed income or have to manage their finances differently are going to go there because they can stretch it out further. They're price buyers. That's just the way it is. But then you go up to the middle level and you say, okay, wow, you got these middle managers, middle class. Where do they go shopping? And what you find is it's the big name stores, Nordstrom's, Ralph Lauren, Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, all these great store brands that are out there. Well, we started looking at it and saying, why do these people go there? And it turned out the reason, we've got all the science behind this, I'm just shortening it. But the reason they go there is because of perception, because of brands, because a brand represents something. It represents success. It represents an acknowledgement of your work. It represents social acceptance. So anybody in that middle block is going to buy based off of how it makes them look. They will spend more money to look better to other people. They want the people above them to know that they could be them one day. They want the people below them to know that they're not one of them. And in the middle, they're just keeping up with each other, keeping up with the Joneses. So the bottom of the pyramid buys off a price. The middle buys off a perception or brands. And then the top of the pyramid, if you ask, well, where do they go shopping? They don't. Either things are custom made for them, like clothing, or they order things online, or they order things, or they have different levels of concierge service. And when you ask people why, people outside of that group will say, oh, because they can, or because it looks, that is not true at all. The reason these people at the highest levels buy the way they buy and purchase things the way they do is the ROI, return on investment, over the amount of time that they spend. In other words, I buy custom suits, or I have my suits made for me, because if I was going to go to the mall and go get fitted at Nordstrom's or whatever, which is lovely, it's great, but that might take me an hour, 2 hours. I got to go back another time and pick up the suit. So I might have 3 or 4 hours into buying a suit, right? Versus the guy's been making my suits and shirts for 25 years, comes in my office, 10 minutes later, he shows me 3 or 4 bolts of cloth. He measures me and he says, I'll see you in a few weeks. I'll drop them off. So 10 minutes of my time to purchase a suit, or 3 hours of my time to purchase a suit. Where's the best return on my time? Well, it's obviously the custom. You can't tell any difference. It's not that much more expensive. It's about deployment of time. And if anybody doesn't believe this, I always say, how many people use dry cleaners? Most people raise their hand. How many people have some kid down the street or a landscaper cut your grass? People raise their hand. How many people have a maid service come by their house once every other week or twice a month or whatever? Some people raise their hand. Same thing. You don't use a landscaping service to cut your grass. You use a landscape service to buy back your Saturday mornings. You can easily wash and press your own clothes, but guess what? You can take it to the dry cleaner so you have your Wednesday night back, so you don't have to stay up all night doing your clothes. That is ROI over time. So if you look at this from a business perspective and you're trying to sell your services, if you go out there thinking everybody thinks the same way you do, you're going to fail. So you might be a price buyer, or you might be a brand person, or you might be, an ROI over time person. It doesn't matter what you are. It matters what the buyer is. So you need to treat people the way they want to be treated and show enormous amounts of respect to them. So if you can go to a committee or something, if you're selling to a big company and realize that they're made up of middle managers, then they're going to look at you and say, okay, Andre, if I'm going to buy from you, basically what they're saying in their head is, how am I going to look if I make this decision to engage you? How important is your brand when the rest of the world sees that we went with you versus going with somebody else? The middle managers.
Yeah.
That is all they care about. If you go in there and talk price to middle managers and all they hear is cheap, and they don't want that associated with their image, right? So a middle manager is never going to buy on price because it's cheap. And a middle manager is never going to think about deployment of time. They're only going to think about how it makes them look. So you've got to kind of suck up your ego a little bit and treat people the way they want to be treated. And if you go in there and you present your product in a way that's received best from the people, because you know how they make their decisions, you will double your sales overnight. Guarantee it. Well, that alone will double somebody's sales.
Well, just last night when I finished reading the book, I realized that I deal with a lot of project managers. That's the middle management of construction sites. And I got two examples. Just to say, I did not help them prove to their bosses that it would make them look good, make them look superstars. Well, I got other customers. That's all I do without realizing that's why we're getting the work. To me, this is a massive book. I think everyone's got to read, and I'll put it in the show notes where you can get it on Amazon. So with that, you got the decision-making process of the middle managers and the C-suite. So C-suite's all about return on investment over their time, realizing how can you help me save time and succeed. And then middle management's all about the perception of the brands and how will you, the supplier or the contractor, help me look good. And then the foundation group, the hardworking working classes, it's all about, it really comes down to price. Okay. So that's 3 client types. You seem to use a pattern of 3 in this book. I noticed you got something about 3 promises, 3 beliefs, and at least 3 questions. I think is also important if we can finish this episode off with those 3 things.
Sure. No, that's the most important part. Thank you for recognizing that, because the way our brains work, whether it's ADHD or not, is it's very, very difficult to comprehend more than 3 things at a time. Most of it has to do with the English language, to be honest with you. So if you're doing business in English, oh boy, I tell you, English is the most difficult language to learn. If you talk to anybody who comes from someplace that doesn't speak English, and as an adult, they have to learn English, they'll tell you it's like torture. It makes no sense. We conjugate verbs backwards. We don't do things. We have constants. We have daily parts. I mean, it's just a disaster, right? But English is the universal language now, and we gotta live with it. But because of English being so difficult, even somebody who grew up speaking English, that's the only language you know. Here's an interesting statistic: if you present something to somebody and you talk about 3 facts or less, you have a 100% acceptance rate. If you add a 4th thing to the conversation, you have a 25% fail rate. If you add a 5th thing to it, you have a 50% fail rate. If you add 6 things or more to a conversation, 100% fail rate. So thank you for noticing that. Everything we do has to be in 3s. So real quick, the pattern, and if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm happy to help and talk to them because they're your listeners. I'll do anything. So please post my contact information. But bottom line is the pattern that these elite producers do when they're engaging their people as a leader or when they're engaging their customers to sell them their services. Number 1, they open up with an honest and sincere attitude of gratitude. And it's not a flippant, oh, hey, thanks for having me today. Let me start talking. No. It is an engagement. It is a presence where you're recognizing their work and you acknowledge it and you mean it. And here's what happens. When we watch these elite producers and these elite leaders do that, what happens is there's a neural exchange in your brain, the recipient's brain, where they bond to you. So if somebody really senses your appreciation, your gratitude, and it's real, it's sincere, they lock onto you and they're bonded to you. And the only way that bond can break is with lack of trust. So if you just do what you say you're going to do, they're with you forever for that one step. So these elite people out there open up with a sincere attitude of gratitude that's not flippant, is very, very present. And then they move into what we call education, which, okay, here's the 2 or 3 things we're here to talk about. Here's my ideas. Do you want to talk about anything else, or can we just talk about these 2 things? Usually the consumer goes, oh, thank God, no, just tell me these 2 things, or tell me these 3 things I need to know. because what you've done is you've given them permission to understand it. Again, the ADHD dream here. Now you can understand it. And here's why. This is what's really, really important. When somebody's making a decision to engage you, only 15%, and from an engineer's perspective, this is hard to bear with me here, buddy. Only 15% of their decision to engage you is based on the facts. The other 85% is based on the emotional connection they have with you. And a lot of times we get into science or engineering or people who are just so proud of their product and their work, they want to tell everybody everything. You're killing the deal. Because what somebody's hiring you to do, and this is very, very important, Andre, what they're hiring you to do is they want to outsource success to you, and they want to feel good about it. So if you go in there with a verbal vomit and tell them all these hundreds of things, you're killing the deal. They only need 15%. And the only reason they need 15% of the facts is that's all they need to know that you know. See, they don't want to know what you know. If they wanted to be an engineer, they would go back to engineering school, right? They don't want to know that. They just want to know enough to know that you know, so they can outsource success to you. That only takes 15%, which is just 2 or 3 things. The rest of it, they just want to feel good about you. They want to like you, because guess what? I know you hate to hear this, but there's other really good engineers out there, right? Yeah. There's other good choices, right? And that's where every product, everywhere, we live in a society of choice. So if there's,
I think you also mentioned in the book about us wanting to educate is more about us feeling good about what we know.
Yeah, it's for you, not for them.
For them, and that's where the flip is.
Bingo. You've got to treat them the way they want to be treated. So the consumer just says, look, I need to know enough to know that you know, so I can check that box. And then I really want to feel good about you because these other guys know it too. But think about this, the brilliance of this. When you open up with an attitude of gratitude that's real, you're bonded to the person. They're already liking you. And then you give them the relief of knowing, hey, I'm only going to talk about 2 or 3 things because I want you to know that I know, and you can trust me, and you can outsource the success of this to me. That is it. They're like, thank God. But then the third thing is ease of business. Nobody is ever going to engage you if it's going to make their life more difficult. And I don't care if it's an engineer, if it's a doctor, if it's buying a new computer, whatever. They want their life to be easy. Most people have enough crap going on in their life. They don't need to engage you to make it any worse. So the third thing that these people always hit on was ease of business. So if you think about it, gratification, education, ease of business. You open up with a real attitude of gratitude and you bonded with them. You give them just a couple of things to know that you know, and they can outsource to you, but they really feel good about you because you've respected them. And then think about the relief of knowing that engaging you is going to be easy, that you're going to make it easy. Now, if it's surgery, but it should still be easy. And
those are the promises.
Oh yeah, those are the promises. And I'm telling you, if you just get that, everything else is fine. I know we don't have a lot of time to go to the rest of it.
So we just want to wrap up with the 3 beliefs and the 3 questions at least. I think the promises, you needed more explanation. I think it is foundation of it. Yeah.
So those promises have to be in order. You have to open up every conversation with gratitude. The middle part has to be about education, and then ease of business. That has to be in order. The 3 beliefs that they all have, it's just a belief. It doesn't have to be expressed. I prefer it to be expressed. It doesn't have to be any order. It's just who you are. Because pretty soon they're going to say, gee, Andre, I always feel so bonded to you. And thank you for being so respectful. And I love this easy to do business with you. But who are you? And they're not saying what's your name. They're saying, who are you?
Right.
And the 3 things that we found exist in 100% of these elite performers. Number 1, they're creative. They're not competitive. They create new ideas, new situations, new thought patterns. They're not competitive. In fact, anytime somebody says they have a competitive price or competitive fees, that means you're the same as everybody else. Literally, the word compendo or compendi in Greek, which is either masculine or feminine, which is where the word competitive comes from, compendo, competitive, it literally means the same or static. So you're saying, hey, I have competitive rates. You might as well say, hey, I'm just the same as everybody else. Nobody cares. People want to be drawn toward creativity. Now, you don't have to be artsy, but you do have to think differently about how you think, and they will engage that. So number 1, be creative. Number 2 is exceed expectations at all times. If it's due on Wednesday, get it to them on Tuesday. If they want it to be done at this budget, you come in under budget. The elite people absolutely exceed all expectations. It's that Ritz-Carlton 4 Seasons type of feeling that you get when you're like, wow, I knew this was expensive, but wow, was it worth it? Wow, they exceeded everything. So they exceed expectations. And the third belief is 100% of them give forward without any expectation of anything in return.
I like this concept that you have about this.
Yeah, that's important because people usually think that, oh, if I'm doing this charity or I'm doing something, I'm bragging. No, you're inspiring. Now, obviously, don't make it about yourself, but these people all have their mission. And like mine is, ADHD, anything in the sensory world and autism and helping with kids with mental health. And I don't mind saying that, here's how many scholarships we do. Here's how we help these kids. Here's how we raise money for it. Here's the research, because there might be somebody out there who says, that's not my thing. My thing is this. You know what? I need to get off my butt and do something about it. And you might spark somebody to do something. So it's not about reflection on you and your work. It's about inspiring, and inspirate means to breathe in. It's about breathing in to somebody where they might pick up the ball and go do something for somebody else. So that's create, huge. Don't compete, exceed expectations at all times, and give forward.
Yep.
Without any expectation of anything in return. Those three beliefs exist. But going back to the question, so what happens if you open up every conversation with gratitude, you clearly explain the 2 or 3 things or less, and then you make their life easy? That's the pattern. That's promises. As they get to know you, they know you're creative, that you exceed expectations, and that you give forward. They collide. It becomes your very being. It becomes the existence of who you are. And so many people are going to be drawn to you as a person and you as your business. Is crazy. Literally, you can turn the valve up and down at will to how much you want to grow. That's how these outliers perform at their level. But here's what's interesting. They also know that it should not be a good decision to buy from you. It should be a wise decision to buy from you. And all of these elite producers know that the consumer, the person who's going to engage with you, regardless of their price or perception or ROI over time, whatever, it has to be a wise decision for them. So what everybody does, you, me, your listeners right now to listen to this, they're asking themselves 3 questions in their head subconsciously. They're saying, look, for this to be a wise decision, is purchasing something from you right for me personally? Is it right for me professionally? And is it right in my spirit, my gut, my conscience? Does this tell me? All 3 of those have to be in harmony for it to be a wise decision. There's plenty of people who say, yeah, I need to do this. It'll make me look good professionally. Personally, I'll get a bonus for it. But, my gut tells me these aren't good guys. And then guess what? They do it anyway. And where does that end up? It ends up falling on their face. Or they say, this is right for me personally. They're good guys. It's right in my gut. My spirit tells me it's good. But professionally, I'm going to get in trouble because my boss said to do it this way. Not a wise decision, right? So the person who's making the ultimate decision has to be right for them personally, professionally, and in their spirit. Here's what's unique, Andre. These elite producers don't go at it and go through the 3 promises, 3 beliefs, hoping that the person's going to be right personally, professionally, spiritually. They actually put that first. They actually say, okay, I'm going to go meet with this client today, or I've got clients coming in my store, whatever. I want to create such a good environment that there is no conflict, that when somebody engages my company, I know that I've done everything possibly to do what's right for them personally, professionally, and in their spirit, their conscience, so that I can serve them better. And as a servant, I'm going to open up every conversation with an attitude of gratitude. As a servant, I'm going to communicate in 2 or 3 things or less so they can outsource success to me, because that's what servants do. And as their servant, I'm going to make their life easier. And as their servant, they're going to find out that I'm creative. I'm not competitive. That's what servants do. As their servant, they're going to find that I exceed expectations. And most importantly, as their servant, they're going to find that I'm going to give to them, I'm going to give forward without any expectation of anything in return. So it all boils down to your mindset. And if you want to go out there and engage people, and you want to do things right, and say you're a taco salesperson, or you're a car salesperson, or an engineer, or whatever, and this always terrifies people when I say it, but you need to get out of the engineering business. You need to get out of the taco business. You need to get out of all that and start getting into the servant business. And if you approach life that you're serving others and help them make their day better, and I happen to be one of the best engineers in all Canada, or I happen to be the best taco guy in the country, or your career becomes the part of it. But your motivation and your inspiration comes from your ability to serve other people with the gifts that you've been given, and you allow people to transfer and outsource success to you. And that is what separates these people and puts them outside the norm, because they don't consider themselves to be entrepreneurs or business people or salespeople. They consider themselves to be servants who are helping people with this unique ability they've got, and they use their gifts, ADHD or whatever, to make it even better. So the study ultimately turned out that if you just do that, those things, it's like a valve. You can turn it up and down at will. So if you want to double your business, good, double it. If you want to triple it, triple it. If you want to 10x it, 10x it. Whatever you want to do, because the world desperately needs servants, and they desperately need people who are grateful, who can simplify, who can make life easier, who will be creative, who will exceed expectations, and who will give forward, knowing that it's right for the people they engage personally, professionally, spiritually. So you figure that out. You do that, whatever you want, it's all yours.
Right. And that sounds to me like a perfect plan for growth.
Yeah, that's where it came from. And real quick, I know we got to go, but the word perfect, by the way, this is interesting. We've only been using the word perfect the way we use it in English for about 170 years. So like when we say perfect, we mean it's done, can't get any better, or it's conclusive. That's not what it means. The word perfect in Hebrew, Aramaic, and some versions of Latin, there's 14 different variations of it. But the one that's the most prominent means, the word perfect means always becoming.
Oh, yeah.
So if something is perfect, it is always becoming, it is always getting better. So we went back and asked these people on a scale of 1 to 10, these outliers, how would you rate yourself? And the average score, 10 being the highest, 1 being the lowest, was a 3.5. And we said, why do you give yourself a 3.5? And they're like, because look at how much further we have to go. This is so exciting. So 3.5 is galactic in a world of always becoming. Whereas we asked the rest of the world what they rate themselves at, the average score was 8.5. And that's because they're trying to compare themselves with each other. These elite producers are trying to compare themselves to their God-given ability and capability. So like I said, 3.5 is galactic when you're always becoming and you're looking at your God-given gifts and abilities and how you can serve more people. So I get excited. So thank you for letting me babble on about this. This is fun.
This is good. Like I said, like you shared the book with me and I couldn't stop reading. And it's easy to follow. It's very easy to read, and it makes 100% sense to act immediately. And I highly recommend to the listeners to read this, because I think I already know I can just teach my team right now to just change the conversation a little bit, and we're going to get a lot more work now. So the three things I got out of this discussion, Don, and also from the book, was one, you are hired to outsource their success to you, and so that they can feel good about it.
Yep.
People can only remember 3 things, and only 6% of it is remembered, but 100% of how they feel about what you said is remembered. Yeah, I got that from the book. And to me, that was huge. That kind of helps me to get my fact finder a little more under control. And
And that's what that is. Just your listeners know. What do you say? There's an interesting part of the study. 10 minutes after a presentation is done, we did this study. People can only recall 6% of what was said in the presentation, but they can recall 100% of how they felt during the presentation. And here's the funny part. We always joke, and it's kind of true. You remember 100% about how you felt. Women remember 100% how they felt forever, plus eternity. So you got to be very careful when you're talking to people, because women are smarter than men. They get it, and they're like, "Oh wait, I remember in 1922 when you said this." Like, oh boy. So people remember how they felt over what you actually said, and that's an important thing. It's not gender specific, but it is very, very, very cognizant of somebody who wants to overtalk.
And the last thing I think is very key for the listeners, and it'll change. If you just take this one, to me, it was big. They want you to be creative and not competitive, because competitive means you're just like everyone else. And that helps you become a value add service. You're able to charge more because there's more value to it versus just trying to beat a price. And I like that point. Like, the point is, competitive means you're just like everyone else. And you know what? I'm not like anyone else. And I tell people that don't want to pay our rates, we're not like anyone else.
Yeah.
But anyways, Don, thank you very much. I'm going to have the link to the book in the show notes. Don just offered that anyone who's listening to this can reach out to them. I'll put his information in the show notes too. I highly recommend it. For the price of it, you're going to immediately make your money back by the time you finish reading the book, because you've already going to have a couple ideas to implement an immediate change, and you're going to get the next job guaranteed.
Yeah, thank you, Andre. And again, thank you for your work. I tell you, I get goosebumps. You're the perfect example of that servant that's out there, and you're helping so many people. And one thing you'll realize if you haven't already is that you're helping people that you're never going to know.
Yeah.
And I do think the universe every once in a while reminds you. It might be 10 years from now, somebody say, "Hey, I heard this podcast a long time ago, and you said something." But I just want to be the one to tell you today you are doing impactful work. There are people who appreciate you and care about you, and it means the world. So thank you for what you're doing.
Thanks, Don. I appreciate that. And I thank you, the listener, for gifting us your time listening to this and in improving and understanding your ADHD and your entrepreneurial journey more. Thanks again, Don. And thank you for listening. We'll talk to you soon.